Alrighty, so today on Cosmic Keys, we are very pleased to have two awesome podcasters with us today. We have Darren and Graham of the podcast Grimerica. Grimerica is a show that I've been listening to for a while now. They cover a lot of different topics. It really reminds me a lot of kind of coast to coast subject matter, which is sort of anything weird, anything interesting, anything paranormal, supernatural, fringe, whatever. So we're super stoked that we get to talk to Darren and Graham today. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thanks for having us on the show.
Yeah, we're good. Thanks for having us. Spring's coming. We're happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, we're hoping spring's going to be coming soon. It's still pretty darn cold here in Chicago, though we've had a couple warmer days recently. But we're so happy to have you guys on our show today. And your podcast is such a fun listen. And I think it'd be fun to start off by just hearing what the origin story of your podcast is. How did you guys come up with this idea? And why did you want to cover these topics?
Yeah, sure. And I also want to say, too, I've listened to yours as well, and you guys have a great show as well. It's very interesting. We love we love the tarot and the sort of the magic occult side of things. So, well, I met Darren at work in a new job. I moved to a different city, and we got introduced as, like, we might want to talk about some things because we had some things in common about likes with ancient mysteries and stuff like that. So it didn't take long for me to introduce Darren to podcasting because I was obsessed with podcasting. And this was back in late 2011, early 2012. And I gave him some of my favorite podcasts, and he was just digging all the topics and getting right into it. And then we went to a conference, a Paradigm Symposium, it had all these guys like, who was at the Paradigm that year? Was Hancock there? No, that was later on.
That was Tsoukalos.
Was that the first year? It was Tsoukalos and Von Daniken, all those guys. So it was like kind of like the Ancient Aliens crowd in a way, and a bunch of other people. But it was really this moment where like the people attending the conference got to hang around with the speakers, and it was very inclusive, and it was great talking to all these people with open minds. And then Darren and I were like, well, we should start, or Darren actually suggested, he's like, we should start a podcast. And I was like, I don't know, man. And then we ended up doing it. And we were going to do this like sort of like news wrap-up-y kind of show, but we changed it to like interview style at the last moment. And we never looked back after that.
Ephraim Palermo.
Yeah.
I was researching Mars.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'll just interview this guy and fucking done. Can I swear?
Yeah, you
okay.
can.
I'll try not to. Then we interviewed Ephraim Palermo, and then, I don't know what we were thinking then. I mean, we never really planned to monetize it. It just sort of monetized itself when people started asking how they could support.
Well, and we also started getting into
we did the money bomb. Remember we were doing the we used to do a 50-50?
Yeah.
50% of nothing, still nothing.
But we ended up spending more money than we thought, right? We were just going to do it real simple and casual, but then we got a little bit too professional. We bought gear and then all of a sudden the hosting fees and this and that. So it started to get pretty expensive quick. And then luckily by that time, people were ready to support the show. And then that's been almost 6 years now.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah. Have you guys always been interested in these kinds of topics? I know you guys cover a lot of different things like paranormal, UFO, conspiracy stuff, or was this something you kind of got interested in later in life?
I've always been interested in it. I think I heard you guys talk about your high school experiences and stuff like that on your show. Yeah. And it made me think about mine and how was mine weird? Like, because I wasn't really into the occult or magic or anything like that, but I was into the paranormal, like ghosts, and we had a couple experiences when we were young where we took a picture in a turret of my friend's house. Mind you, we were smoking the ganja back then. It was probably like 1985 or 86, but we took some pictures, and there was a picture of a ghost in there with a glowing orb and a cummerbund and a little tie, and apparently that was the attire of this guy that had died there, like in that house. This was a new turret that was built, and then I remember asking my girlfriend's mom. We were showing my girlfriend's mom, and she's like, "Don't go there." Like she kind of warned us away from all that. And we were playing around with the Ouija board a little bit in the classrooms at lunchtime, and things got a little bit weird there. So that's back from high school, and then I had a pretty profound UFO sighting, when I was 19 or 20, and that led me to that whole side of things. And then I lost it for quite a few years, getting into the corporate stuff and alcohol and drugs and all the shit that I had to go through before. Then I popped out the other side and became interested in everything again. That's kind of my story of the past. How about you, Darren?
I was into like unsolved mysteries and stuff when I was a kid, but then I was like got into video games and stuff, and that was really. And then I started drinking, and then I just did that for a long time, a lot of drinking and partying and carrying on, and then it was actually Ancient Aliens that really started getting me back into it, and then I married my wife Lisa, and she's was anti-vaccine and meditating and doing all that sort of stuff, and it started creeping in from all sides, and Graham's doing all this biohacking and coffee enema and everything else, and he gets me listening to these podcasts, and I got hooked on Mysterious Universe right away. So yeah, I guess it was basically the same sort of story. When you're sort of carrying on and partying, you don't really have time for much. But as soon as I sobered up and needed something to fill my time, then it's been a sort of knowledge thirst ever since.
Yeah, it's weird how this stuff reveals itself to be like your passion in life, because it's a really weird passion to have, but that's kind of where we're at too. It's just like it sort of takes over in a way. Mm-hmm. We're interested too. Like, we talk to people from sort of all over the country. We like to get their sort of background, their cultural background. And you guys are from Canada. Like, what do you think? Do you think like the landscape and stuff like that of where you live has anything to do with your interest in it? Because like, I've never seen a UFO, but I feel like if I lived somewhere a little bit more remote, that it might be more likely and stuff like that. Like, what do you think your Canadian roots have to do with this whole interest?
That's a good question. I don't think I've thought about that much. I was thinking that more of my roots of my mom she was born in Skipton in England, and my dad's roots go back to Scotland. So I feel like that has more of an influence on like the whole Celtic thing, or the whole almost like a pagan thing in a way, or the whole King Arthur. Like, I feel like I'm more tied in with that than Canada in a way. I don't feel like the geography has really affected my belief system at all. Darren might be different because he's from way the hell up in Ontario.
Yeah, so if anything, I would say it held it back.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, there wasn't any TV really. There was 3 or 4 channels. And then, as I was older, they kept adding a couple channels a year. And, by the time I moved away, you get satellite and all that. But when I was like, sort of in my formative younger years, up until high school, we had 18 channels, I think, and 13 to 17 didn't work. And then you have like, there's no internet. There's a shitty library that, there's maybe one book on.
So you're kind of from a small town up north,
I remember seeing like a Loch Ness book, and that was kind of cool. I was really into sharks, but there's not a lot without the internet. It'd be different today, but without the internet, you're kind of shut off to all that sort of stuff. And I don't really remember a lot of like lore, I don't remember a lot of like family lore or local lore or anything like that.
Yeah. Did you grow up in a religious household or any kind of spiritual system that you grew up with?
No, none in mine. My family
not even native at all.
No, I didn't grow up with any in my native culture. I just started dipping into that later in life. So my family pretty atheistic. I would say I bet you they're not. If I asked them all each individually, I could get it out of them that they're not. But at the same time, they're not, outright religious or anything like that. I shouldn't say they're atheists. I shouldn't say that. I take
Agnostic,
that back.
maybe.
Maybe agnostic, or maybe just none of my business.
And I don't know, my family, we went to I think my parents were technically Protestant, but we went to church a couple times when I was young. But we were by no means religious. Spiritual, probably a little bit. My nana was kind of like into Buddhism for a while, and my dad was pretty open-minded about just the presence of mind and being present. Like, I remember some of the advice he gave me was like, stay in the moment, and that was back in like the early 90s. So I feel like he was kind of ahead of his time back then, but we weren't religious. And it's funny hearing you guys talk about, I think you both mentioned Catholicism.
So he grew up Catholic,
right,
but I grew up pretty much non-religious.
Okay,
yeah.
So it must have been that other guy you guys were talking to on the podcast. And I started thinking about how much I've heard of that, and I thought it's America, like a lot of Americans down there. I think there's a way more of a Catholic influence down there. I mean, back east in Canada, you'd probably get that in like the Italian communities, maybe, and the maybe the French, even stuff like that. But I feel like it's just more of like down there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally like a sort of an ethnic thing too. Like, I went to Catholic school and Catholic grade school, and everybody that I grew up with was like Italian, Irish, or some kind of Eastern European.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like it's just funny. It's like it's sort of an urban thing because a lot of cities like New York, Boston, Chicago, there's just so many like ethnically sort of segregated parts of the city. Like, I'm Lithuanian and Irish and German, but like my dad's side of the family, the whole neighborhood was like all Lithuanian, you know. So big American cities, it's kind of totally fading now, but used to be just like little Italy, little Poland, little whatever. So that definitely has something to do with it.
Yeah. It almost makes me interested too, because I think we've spoken to a lot of Catholics who've kind of like ventured down this journey into like weird alternative spirituality. And it almost makes me think like Catholics already believe in a lot of crazy shit. So it's not so much of a leap to start kind of, you know, going into UFOs or paranormal, because there's already a lot of kind of crazy stuff that's going on within Catholicism.
Yeah, and I think for me, from more of a spiritual sort of new age interest, I've been thinking about this recently, about the religious and the rituals in Catholicism and maybe other religions as well that have more meaning than I ever thought they would. Like, looking at it from a spiritual and a higher power perspective, and the rituals and the ceremony and the power and the symbolism, like now becoming interested in the occult magic, you can see where that makes a big maybe makes a big difference, or is impactful for people, even without wanting it to be, you know.
I want to read the Bible again. I think we should read the Bible on the show. Well, we should interpret our own interpretation of the Bible.
Maybe the Book of Enoch. Maybe we'll do that. I have that book.
We'll start with that.
Yeah.
Well, the Book of Ezekiel is pretty trippy. It's like kind of like a DMT trip.
If we could sneak
So maybe
in,
that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
if we can sneak in enough religion, we won't have to pay taxes.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we wanted to. We were also curious, like. So I sort of think of Grimerica sort of as like more Art Bell-ish topics, but it seems like you guys, and I think of like the higher side chats and stuff, you know, shows that aren't necessarily about the occult. It seems like a lot of there's like a crossover with the communities in a way. Like, have you guys sort of experimented with any magical work or any sort of, you know, woo-woo spiritual stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. My big change moving to Calgary was I did some sigil work, and it made a huge change, like almost instantly. And recently I did I tried some protection work for my girlfriend has problems with demonic or incubus encounters. And I did some work around that. I don't even know if I should say it if I ruin it by saying it, but I'm talking about it. So,
Yeah,
like I haven't talked about this on the show, but it had a direct, like I'm talking a direct impact on the two times I tried it, had a direct impact with her encounter. Like literally sent the thing away in the middle of it. Like, and then she's never had that happen before. So that's kind of more.
So is it like a sleep paralysis like type deal?
Yeah, I don't think it's sleep paralysis, but it's very similar to that. Like I don't.
But waking up. Yeah, it's you. I'm not saying, I'm not like dismissing.
No.
Waking up. Yeah, I've had that. I've had that a lot when I was partying too much, and it's like when your sleep is disrupted by staying up until sunrise, and then like your body is destroyed from partying or whatever, and then I feel like that's when they come in and swoop in for you.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Cocaine demon.
Yeah. So that's recently, and I mean I've had some sort of like breath work. I've done some breath work where I've felt some pretty profound chakra. Like I think I had a Kundalini experience, which I didn't think that was it at the time, but now when I look back, that was from a breath and sound workshop kind of thing, which was fairly profound physically anyways.
Yeah, that stuff can be pretty powerful. And it's interesting too with like sigils and chaos magic. That kind of stuff is becoming, I think, more and more popular. People are almost moving away from like kind of really agey, woo-woo type, even like Wicca, and moving more towards like chaos magic or even like Kundalini experiences, all that kind of stuff. So that's just something I've been kind of noticing. There's been kind of a shift going on with more people being into that kind of thing. Though it's a lot of guys in chaos magic. There's not many girls there.
That's weird. That's weird.
Well, the guys' version of chaos magic is just like the women's new age, meditation or law of attraction. That's like the new age movement is populated by mostly women, and the magical movement is populated by mostly men, but they're all doing the same thing. I mean,
we actually have an episode about.
Yeah, kind of like the stereotype.
I meant to listen to that one. I had it lined up and I didn't have time to listen to it. I saw the title and I was like, that one sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like an hour of us like bashing on various people in a nice way, though, talking about various stereotypes on.
She bashes women and I bash on the men, so it's not sexist.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah, you gotta be careful these days.
Yeah, we hope we can get away with more because we're like got both, so both a guy and a girl on our podcast, so we can say whatever we want, hopefully. We'll see.
What I really liked about learning some of this stuff recently is people really saying to do your own thing. Like it doesn't have to be, ritual or chaos or ceremonial or whatever label. Like it can be your own thing, whatever works for you or whatever, however you're guided. So I kind of just sort of took a bunch of stuff I was learning, kind of put it together into something. And
you gotta be careful with your thoughts at the very least. Then you can sort of build that out as you see fit, I guess. My outlook has changed a lot over 300 and some podcast episodes and 7 years of raising kids and being married, and it's it's a strange world. It's definitely, I think if you don't at least have some sort of, if you don't know where you're headed, then you're just going to go in circles. At the very least, you need to know where you want to be. If you don't like where you're at, then start thinking about how you're getting out of that. And, baby steps at a time, but that's, I mean, even at the bare minimum, we're in a world where there's no magic. At the bare minimum, just doing that is going to make your life better. And just thinking, positive or having a goal or affirming that you're going to get someplace or get something or do something or finish this, or just doing that is already, you know, there's science behind that says just doing that without any magic will make a difference. It's like
even just gratitude, even.
Exactly. So, I mean, sort of sprinkle a little magic on that, or a little whatever the fuck you want to call it. And, you know, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. In a way, the magic is just kind of, like a sprinkler enhancing our own power of our minds. So I think that's definitely true. I mean, people call like it the placebo effect sometimes, but I'm always like, what does it matter if it works? You know, so you got to kind of get your mindset there first, and any ritual or additional magical thing you put around it, if that intention's not there, then it's not going to work.
And if the placebo works, so does the nocebo. So.
Yeah, that's kind of creepy. Like when you think about it, like you don't want to start thinking negatively because you're going to create your own reality there.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I drive Uber in Chicago, and I mean, if I don't pay attention to my thoughts, I'm going to be attracting just nothing but pissed off vibes all day. So I usually got one earbud in listening to like a podcast while driving people around. So definitely true. So we wanted to hear what you guys have to say about the whole, I guess, the politics in Canada, just the way, you know, it's sort of been, I'm not really making a judgment on it because I really don't know how it is, but a lot of people, you know, talk about the whole Jordan Peterson thing and about like those laws and stuff. Like, do you see it as being blown out of proportion, or do you really think that sort of these like speech laws and these sort of very sort of restrictive laws are leading to really bad stuff or not?
I think it's meant to seem like it's blown out of proportion. But I don't think there should be any laws on speech except maybe incitement. You know, we could talk about that. But I mean, we don't really have free speech in Canada anyway, but we definitely shouldn't give up any more of it. And we shouldn't. And I mean, I'm a status Indian who thinks that, you know, the Indians probably shouldn't be a protected class anymore. We've got to stop dividing people up because of their whatever team they're on or whatever group they're from, or it's all heading in the wrong direction if we start giving people special rights. And I think we're doing that in a couple different ways. And I'm not going to get into any examples. I could give you a whole bunch down a couple of different political avenues, but I'm just going to get myself... I'm not going to get into that here. I'm just going to offend people, and that's not it's not my intention, but I think we're starting to put people up in protected classes and victim classes. And I think, I mean, you know, look at 50 years or however many years it's been of giving money to the natives isn't working. So we got to figure out something other than that. I mean, a lot, you know, and I think that's just sort of an outward thought on all of it, whether it's, and I'm not saying that we should go out and hate on these groups or anything like that. That's the last thing I'm doing, but the very fact that we have to be splitting people up into these groups, I think is kind of a step in the wrong direction. And maybe that's just because it seems to me like it's sort of gone beyond a pride thing, and it's turned into a team thing. And it seems like there's a bunch of different teams stacking up on each other, and it's all about, you know, who can belong to more, who's more oppressed, or who can belong to a bigger, who has the more victim whatevers. So it's, you know, that's
so up in Canada as well as down in the States?
Yeah, I think it's here too. Yeah, for sure. We just don't notice it as much. It's creeping in. I think Trudeau's hiding a lot of that, but once he's gone, you're gonna notice it.
Yeah, he's pretty corrupt. I mean, just like
he's super corrupt.
I mean,
like that's what. No, he just has a pretty smile and everything else, but the guy's fucking. The guy lies all day long, and nobody's going to tell you that. Nobody's counting how many times Trudeau lied a day, but our Canadian media is counting how many times Trump lies a day. So I don't know what's up with that.
Well, he's kind of like a Bush, right? Like his dad was president.
Yeah.
Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, yeah.
I don't think a lot of Americans even know that. Like I
didn't know
found
that.
out about that.
Yeah.
The only thing I know about Justin Trudeau is
his real dad was Castro.
He looks like a Banana Republic model or something.
Yeah, that's pretty much all Americans know, that he's attractive. So that's about the extent that most Americans have about Justin Trudeau, which probably isn't good considering Canada's our neighbor over there. So we should probably know more.
I almost wasn't allowed into Canada when I flew in because they like looked up my criminal record and they were like, what happened in Wyoming in 2011? And I actually got in a bar fight back then, so I had a battery charge. And I was like going to a bachelor party in Montreal, but I was sitting in that room like I really didn't know if they were going to let me in. And they said, if you get a DUI in the States, they don't let you in. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's right. If you tell the border going into the States that you smoke weed, they don't let you in.
Good to know.
Good to know. Yeah, got to keep that on the DL. But that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it definitely does seem that, like here in America, there's so much division and it's, a big mess. So, it's kind of hopefully.
Is that, do you notice that
coming together more?
Do you notice that like in the street, in your day to day, or just on the internet or?
Just on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, we live in Chicago, so but
it's people that I know in Chicago because I play music and stuff and do art. So I'm friends with lots and lots of like art school people who are, they're my people. We're all creative, like right-brained people. But most of the time when I just tune out, I don't go on Facebook anymore. Instagram, it's hard to like preach. So I'm just pretty much on Instagram. That's about it. But I think it's a social media thing only. That's the only reason it's allowed to get so bad.
Right. Well, even with like the media kind of blowing things out of proportion, Chicago is a great example of that, because anyone who hasn't ever been to Chicago, like they hear like you live in Chicago and they're like, oh my God, are you safe? And it's like, dude, like we're fine. I've never been mugged or in any situation.
I mean, I got robbed within the first 2 weeks of moving to the city. So, but
maybe it's just my experience, but
no, it's really not that bad.
It's really not that bad. And I think that's just, the news media, like blowing it all out of proportion. Like it's a pretty safe city as long as you just don't go to a couple areas, like you're gonna be fine, unless you're Dan and happen to get mugged within the first 2 weeks.
But somebody took a crowbar and just crowbarred our door open, and
that's scary.
I came home and was like, when something like that happens, it takes a while for your brain to process. And I was like, oh wait, like our door is all broken. I wonder why that happened. Then I walk in and there's like a toolkit open on the counter. I'm like, well, somebody was messing with the tools. I'm like, wait, nobody's home. Wait, maybe I got robbed. And then I run to my bedroom, no laptop. They just took like laptop. My roommate had some guns. They took the guns. He had some cash. They took the cash and then out like that. And then the cops came and they were like, literally like the Superbad from the movie Superbad. They were like, oh shit, man, that's crazy. Hey, do you ever go to this bar down the street? I'm like, you're not going to catch these people, are you? And so,
right.
Yeah.
Well, you never know, man. Maybe you'll get your laptop back someday.
Oh, hell no. That was in 2013.
That's outdated anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys actually talk about like some conspiracy theories too on your podcast every once in a while. And I don't want to necessarily call them conspiracy theories because I don't know, there's some stigma with the word conspiracy, but do you have any like ones that you're particularly interested in at the moment or attached to? Or
there's so many to choose from.
I'm more of a skeptic, so I always play like the devil's advocate on conspiracy theories, while Dan's more believer.
Oh, my big ones are vaccines and 9/11 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's I seem to be able to throw down, I guess. What do you, Graham?
Yeah, mine are probably like UFOs and weather modification. I mean, the weather modifications has been going on for so long now, decades, and So there's some researchers out there that are just pulling together all the documents and all the real programs that are modifying the weather, and that never gets taken into account in the whole global warming thing. So that's my one of my big ones.
Yeah, Chicago. It's funny, like yesterday, Tuesday was like blue skies. I slept in pretty late, but blue skies, beautiful day, and then you just, see jets in the sky, and then today it's like you look at the sky, it's like a nice blanket of clouds. So it's interesting. I'm not really educated enough, but I know there seems to be like a weird correlation between those mysterious high flying jets and then like blankets of clouds that last like 2 days. Yeah. So
what would be the purpose? Like, why would anyone do that to the weather? Like, what is their goal, I guess, if this is going on?
Well, in Calgary, they do it to the insurance companies pay to seed the clouds with aluminum so that the hail falls before it gets to the city. And then they don't have to pay out money in hail damage, which I mean seems innocent enough, but I mean, when it turns out that, if there was no aluminum, there'd be no Alzheimer's and aluminum's a problem. It turns out to be a problem. I would argue most of it's not coming from that, but the insurance company, I don't like the idea that the insurance company can dump shit into the clouds so that they can save money and I don't get a say in it.
Yeah, it's pretty, aluminum is I've even heard that there's like patents on the crops to aluminum resistance because they know that aluminum is everywhere now.
Wow, that's interesting. I
mean, like the GMOs.
Yeah,
I haven't heard of that yet.
Yeah, so there's the cloud seeding aspect, like what Darren talked about, which is really, it's well documented. There's companies paying for it. There's weather modification ink out there. There's a whole bunch of companies that advertise it. They do that all over the world. And then there's the stuff that that Dan was mentioning, which is a little bit more hard to discern. The high level guys out there flying that seems to create these hazy clouds, and some say that's like solar radiation management. Like they're already trying to cool the earth down by spraying those clouds. Or there's a whole bunch of crazy conspiracies that go from there on. 3D battlefields and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I don't know. I just know of the stuff that they are doing, and the rest of it's just like, it's just the cherry on the top for weather modification. There's enough data and there's enough stuff out there of the stuff they really are doing, and it's documented. And then I think they changed the jet fuel. The one main jet fuel's got a whole bunch more chemicals added to it, and that could be causing a lot of that as well. And again, why are they doing it? I don't know. It's just that's kind of the big question.
It's like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons when he blocks the sun out.
I haven't seen that episode.
these climate alarmists, it might come to that. Grant, we're a little one-sided in Grimerica. We haven't had, but most of our guests are probably global warming guys, but the kind of experts that we've chosen to talk to, Randall Carlson, Don Easterbrook, guys like that, Ben Davidson, Jim Lee. He's yeah. If anything, we don't have a huge amount of control over it. I don't think pulling carbon out of the atmosphere is a good idea. I really don't think that's a good idea. It's just not a good idea to pull carbon out of the atmosphere. Everyone says we need less carbon, but
carbon dioxide.
Yeah, carbon dioxide. But I think at like 270, everything dies, and it's like most of the rainforests are thriving closer to 1,000. And like, if you want to grow good weed, you're going to want to be pumping in a little CO2. You want to get that CO2 up to at least 800 or 900 because that's when plants are thriving. So the best way to clean carbon, I guess, would be to let those plants thrive, and they'll just keep eating more and more and more. I think our attention would be better focused if we would quit crying wolf about carbon and worry about some of the real atrocities that the corporations are doing to the planet.
Yeah, we're definitely modifying the weather unintentionally. Like as humans, I think we're making a difference, but I don't agree with the way they're trying to tax the globe, and they're trying to blame us when they're doing when there's other things going on that they're not taking into account. Like the guys our friends have a little chat there, and they were talking about if the focus wasn't stuck on carbon dioxide, they could do a lot more with the other pollution that's going on that's fucking up the biosphere, you know.
It's so weird because it's like you think of the green movement and it's supposed to be like hippies, you know, and you would think there would be some organic way to do it, but the green thing now is like 1984, like totalitarian, like spraying chemicals, like weird laws. It's like, isn't there like a natural way to do this? And I just feel like if everything wasn't so atheistic and materialistic, people would be like, hey, there's like a spiritual solution to these problems, and it has to do with sort of like animism or like
getting back to the land
in a spiritual way versus like hardcore like Dr. Frankenstein like coming up with a way to block the sun to save us. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think we'd probably all be better off if we just had a garden.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
At least maybe one step.
That's probably going to be illegal soon.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
I think it is in some neighborhoods. You can't have like a garden in your front yard. I know that with zoning. It's crazy. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to read, there's a quote from the Club of Rome. I'm trying to find the actual quote. So there's a book that the Club of Rome did. It was a bunch of elites that wrote these books as well, and they met about how to improve the earth and all this kind of stuff. You can believe whatever you want on the intention of the Club of Rome, but they said the common enemy of humanity is man, and searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. So that's a pretty
toxic way of, I mean,
they convinced all these kids not to have kids. I mean, come on, man. Come on.
Well, and it's also like, it's like if you breathe air or like take a shit, you're just like poisoning the globe. It's like being alive and breathing out carbon. And it's like being human is sort of not, it's viewed as bad and like don't have more kids. There's all that stuff. But it's a very clever control mechanism for sure.
Yeah,
there's a lot of room for improvement for sure.
100%.
You know, we could figure out if we could just get, quit subsidizing corn and shit, and let's start rotating some crops and doing shit properly. And,
that's one of my big like pet peeves is how corn is subsidized, but like fresh vegetables aren't. Yeah. And even though I live in the city, like I have this like fantasy that someday I would like have my own little homestead and make all my own food and have my garden and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of obsess over topics like that on how we can improve like the food culture here in America, because it's just so messed up right now. And maybe that's why kind of I turn towards like, because I'm a pagan, so I'm all about like nature, earth-based spirituality, and I kind of see that as, I might be the only one thinking this, but I kind of see that as the future. Like we got to kind of like spiritually commit to kind of going back to the natural world in some way. Even though I love technology and I use technology every day, there's got to be some more of a balance than we currently have. I think we're a bit too on the tech side and not enough kind of human side and kind of living and working with nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to a threshold there where we can spring that back, though, where the technology can propel us past some, like fusion or something like that, where we can get off of fossil fuels or something like that. I don't know. We need the tech to save us. I don't know. I'd go either way. It'd be nice to be able to start like materializing food with one of those things from Star Trek and stuff like that, or all that sort of stuff. But bigger guns and bombs doesn't sound so fun.
Well, I like the idea of not subsidizing the corn and making other things affordable. I mean, I'm trying not eat not eat sugar and wheat right now, and then the other thing is mainly
Dairy.
starches. Trying to cut out starches. I don't care about the dairy so much, but like just to buy a healthy bag of bean chips. So I don't get the starches, but I can have like a healthy snack. It's like $5 for a bag of bean chips. You know, I mean, anything healthy is just ridiculously expensive, and you know, and I don't mean that other stuff isn't healthy, but if you're trying to eat just no sugar, no starch, no wheat, it's impossible without spending way more money. So
we wanted to ask you guys, because you guys talk a lot about like you said, like biohacking and alternative diets and stuff. Like, since you've tried out, it sounds like you tried a lot of stuff out. Like, have you found one that works well for you that you would recommend?
Well, yeah, Darren's sort of ahead of me on this one, but he's cut. Well, you kind of go cutting sugar out, but you've cut wheat out for a while now.
Sugar, wheat, sugar, gluten, and dairy for the most part. I like my lattes once in a while, but other than that, I cut those out. I mean, I'm lucky I can handle myself in the kitchen, so I can make that still taste good. I had to get a couple of cookbooks, obviously, but if you can follow a good cookbook, it's really not that hard. It kind of gets, some of the stuff's a little more expensive, but you only have to buy it once. But I mean, when you're working with a lot of raw ingredients, it's not too bad. You know, you can get a couple bags full of vegetables for pretty cheap. Fruit gets a little expensive, but I mean, you can get a lot of vegetables pretty cheap in Canada anyway, even in the winter. In Chicago, I'd imagine it's the same. And then I go to the butcher for my meat. I try and eat the vegetables organic. I don't care so much about the meat. It's hard to find organic meat.
Hard to find grass-fed beef up here, really.
Yeah, I'll settle for no hormone nor antibiotic. And I mean, in Canada, we got, like, I don't know if it's in the States, but in Canada, we got this thing where they really started marking up stuff that's non-GMO. So the Congress, or we don't have a Congress, we got the House, but they said, no, we're not going to make people label GMOs. So instead, another agency popped up that started saying, well, okay, we're going to do all this. And I don't know if they're nonprofit.
So they label them non-GMO
so,
instead of forcing people to label them GMO. They're allowing companies to label things non-GMO.
Yeah, they can't stop them from doing that. So there's a third-party service that's now going around and labeling things as certified non-GMO. So I'm pretty much okay if I'll settle for that. But we try to do organic on our vegetables and like no wheat, no sugar. Which it sounds crazy. But once you get there, it's really not that. I really don't really notice it.
I like to focus from no wheat, no sugar, but I'm not losing the weight as fast as I thought I would. Like, I'm considering how much sugar I gave up, like treats and stuff like that, and snacks. I'm surprised that
I still eat potato chips, so
yeah.
But I'm not on the dairy.
Yeah,
I do butter.
Yeah.
I do butter and ghee.
Yeah,
it's weird because, like an idiot, I watched What the Health in like 2017, which was the vegan movie, and went vegan for like 2 months, but that like fucked my stomach up permanently. Like, now I have crazy, like, it's like silent reflux, which is like acid reflux, but it doesn't give you heartburn, but it like makes it hard to breathe. And so I'm thinking I need to try out some type. I think it might be gluten related or wheat related, but I eat like shit these days. But I can, like, I'm sort of like a guinea pig for like eating shitty food, how bad it's starting to make me feel. And it's like,
you got to turn that around.
Yeah.
Man, the main reason I stopped eating gluten was like I had tried it for a bit because our buddy John Brisson told me to, and I just couldn't commit to it. And then my wife was really doing it. She had to do the no gluten, no sugar because she gets these attacks if she combines the two. So I was like, okay. So I mostly quit wheat. Out of, just sort of support and helping out. And then it's like, I went out to an event. It had been probably a month or a month and a half, maybe 2 months. And I went out to an event with my buddy and I just ate whatever the fuck I wanted. And I woke up the next day and for like 3 days later, going to the bathroom was a disaster. A couple of my aches and pains were creeping back in. Like, that was the main thing I noticed getting off wheat. I noticed aches and pains. when I'm on all these aches and pains that used to bug me when I was eating a ton of wheat, like bread all the time and, you know, gluten and everything, pasta all the time, all those aches and pains sort of creeped out and I'm not that, like I said, I like my lattes and even like, you know, I need my coffee. So if I can't get a latte, then, you know, and there's no honey around, I'll put sugar in it. But the one thing I'm pretty good on is wheat. I don't take wheat, and you know my aches and pains are a fraction of what they were before, and that's what you said you noticed too, right?
Yeah, I just thought of it. What in the hockey warm up before I started playing, I used to be really all my joints, like my wrists and my elbows, were really really sore, and I just noticed that's gone now. So after like 2.5 months of no wheat, so.
Well, that's interesting. I should maybe try that. I still eat a lot of wheat, but I haven't had any kind of aches and pains from it. I guess one of my other kind of conspiracy theories when it comes to food is I try and really stay away from processed food. And that's, I think, been a big change where I don't cut out any food groups or any particular foods, but I try and live by the philosophy of I can eat anything I want as long as I make it myself. So if I want chips, that means I have to like slice potatoes really thin and fry them up, and who's going to do that? But, you know, so it kind of like limits your bad food just because of, you know, your own laziness of not wanting to make certain kinds of foods. But since I started doing a lot more home cooking and trying to kind of stay away from most processed foods, that's been a big change, I think, in my health. Been feeling a lot better from that.
Yeah.
But it takes a hell of a lot of time, and I work from home since I do tarot reading full time, so I at least have the time to kind of be on top of that. But I know a lot of people don't have that ability, so it's a lot harder.
AKA me.
Yeah.
I won't get into it, but it's been interesting because my living situation is shakier than it used to be. I'm not getting groceries as much. I'm in a very chaotic period of my life, and I'm sort of just embracing it. But, you know, fast food, just like gas station, whatever the gas station's got when I'm out driving and stuff, it's just crazy. At least I know now that it's not BS. And I think the wheat thing is huge just because they spray all that. It's hard to get non-organic bread or pasta at a restaurant or anything. And that's sprayed down with
glyphosate,
with the pesticide. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's what's fucking my stomach up too. And, but I think the gluten-free thing in a weird way got labeled as being like, you know, a white chick thing.
Oh, it's super trendy. Yeah.
For a while it was like, oh, I'm hashtag gluten-free. Like it's like a, you know, yoga mats, that type of thing. But it's like actually it's just poison free because it doesn't have poison from the glyphosate or whatever. So,
well, I mean, not only that, I mean, a loaf of bread went from like 72 hours to 4 hours. You know, it used to take like a couple of days to make bread, and it used to be a natural process. And now you look at the side of your bread, it's got like 30 different ingredients. It's going from dough to shelf and to bag within 4 hours, and you can't even get the good wheat anymore. You can't. It seems hard to find. I mean, I watched a documentary. I can't remember what it's called. It was actually a little farm outside of Chicago that had started. He was a corn subsidized farm for a year, and he started doing the proper crop. He bought his old family farm back, and he started doing the proper crop rotations and everything. And he started meeting with the restaurants in Chicago and working with them on their menus and growing different seasonal crops every year. And he was working with a local baker in Chicago that was cooking, so he had this farmer growing these ancient grains. He tracked down these ancient grains, and he had this farmer grow a bunch of them for him. And then this baker made a bunch of bread. And
that wasn't Saladin? That wasn't the guy we had on?
No, it wasn't Saladin. Okay. No, this was on Netflix.
Okay, I saw that too.
And he was able to give it to all of his celiac patients. Were able to eat this bread made from wheat, real bad, but it was made from these ancient grains that haven't been fucked with.
I think I might have seen that. Was that from Michael Pollan's Cooked?
Yeah,
video
that was probably on.
Series?
Yeah, it could have been on that.
Yeah,
I love
was
that
really
guy, Michael Pollan.
I think there's something to that.
Well, he was just in Europe.
I need to look him up.
He was just in Europe, and he said the bread's fucking totally different.
Oh yeah, I was in Paris, and I was eating this amazing breakfast bread, the brioche bread, these big thick slices and croissants, and this was just last October, and it was my body was great on it. It's totally different there.
But they don't have GMO wheat in Europe.
Yeah. That must be what it is, maybe. I don't know, but it's totally different.
I don't think they do. I mean, don't quote me. I'm not an authority on fucking anything, for the record.
It was weird. I lived in Prague for a year, and while I was there, like, Czech food is not what a normal person would consider healthy. It's like meat, goulash, potatoes.
Meat and potatoes,
bread, a ton of beer. I lost weight in Prague, like eating like just meat and carbs and beer. That's my whole diet, like no vegetables. And then I come back to America and immediately gain like 10 pounds. I'm like, how is this possible? So there's got to be something going on, kind of behind the scenes with how our food is processed or farmed, because I've never been more healthy than when I've been eating shit in Europe, basically. There's a big difference there somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
So I actually have a tarot deck here because I think you guys had like a question you want to ask, and I'd be to pull some cards for you.
Yeah, I'd love to. We'd love to do that. That'd be pretty cool. Maybe you can help us frame the question. We have a new what?
Oh yeah, you do. We have a question.
Yeah, we have a new podcast out. It's called 13 Questions, and it's for men, and it's like a sort of a self-discovery or kind of there's 13 like deep questions, and we ask them, and then we do like a little extra section at the end, and we put that in a subscriber feed. But there's an ability also to take this and open source it. So what we've done is, for people that want to support the show, they can go and ask. They can do this on their own. So they can go out and ask their grandpa, their uncle, or whoever, like their heroes, whoever they want, and ask these questions, and then we'll put it in the feed. Like we'll produce it and put it in the podcast feed. So it's a way for people to get involved, because we've had success with just involving listeners and stuff in Grimerica and just talking about people's emails and their experiences and their stories. And I mean, a lot of people start coming out of the woodwork and want to talk about things openly. So I guess the question is, how will the 13 Questions open source
We don't even know how Grimerica is going to go yet.
I know, but
that's the question.
So that's the question, I guess.
That's cool, because I've listened to the show, and that sounds like a really cool way to like get more people asking those same 13 questions, because there are 13 questions. It's not, I wouldn't say it's taboo to talk about this, but nobody's talking about the men problem. You know what I mean? Yeah. So,
well, we talked about it. We were just talking about how men are kind of having a tough time in society just in our last episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great idea for a podcast. What are some of the questions that you ask? Are they always the same, or are they like different 13 questions?
They're pretty much the same, but they've evolved, and they do change up a little bit. But it's like, what was the best advice your parents ever gave you, or what was your favorite book, and what was your biggest regret or mistake or embarrassment, or like some pretty deep questions on, what was your biggest, like, sort of your best influence in life, or is that a good example, Darren? Do you have a couple more here?
Yeah.
Darren's probably pulling them up.
What do we got? We got, what rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think that it's important? What's the most courageous thing you've ever done in your life or seen? What institution of society or structural aspect of modern life would you change given the chance?
What should men strive for to be a man in today's world? Like, it kind of gets into a little bit of that as well, which is sort of more the taboo side, I think, that Dan was talking about, where we mentioned gender.
There's no such thing as gender.
Yeah, we mentioned gender in there.
Just kidding.
I mean, they're just
our listeners are a good combo of across the spectrum of liberal and conservative, I think. So we do a good job of including everyone.
Yeah, I think us too. We try to be very inclusive as well.
Yeah.
I'm just a little alt-righty sometimes, but we try and reel them in.
I get accused of that, but it's not true.
But yeah, it's more, yeah, that's kind of, I mean, spreading the movement is kind of a good way to think about it is, you know, the more, we can only do so many interviews. We get so busy. We got day jobs we're still contending with. And, you know, this way we can, you know, I'd like to get it to the point where we just had tons of content and it was coming in from all different angles and it became like a badge of honor, you know, where people are emailing us trying to get on the show.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. So that's a good question. I'm just going to do some quick shuffling and I'll draw a quick 3 cards and we'll go over the meaning of those cards and how it relates to your new podcast and how it's going to work with kind of this open source method that you're trying out.
Sure. Sounds good.
Has anybody else done that in another show format?
We don't think so, but I'm sure someone will tell us we're wrong. Graham at Grimerica.com.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I've never heard of that in that way. Yeah.
Patent pending.
Yeah, I want to hear it from, you know, someone with like a badass grandpa. You know, like there's probably so many hidden gems out in the world.
Exactly.
Maybe, and it's like maybe they're not public figures, but some badass like farmer cowboy person, you know.
Yeah,
you never know what people's secrets are that they could potentially share with you on that. So I bet those conversations can get pretty deep pretty quickly.
Yeah,
so
totally.
We've all got more in common.
Awesome. Well,
than we
are you
think,
ready
right?
for?
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so we're going to start. We're going to pull one card at a time. I got the deck all nicely shuffled. So our first card, we got the devil card.
Perfect.
Wow, that's awesome.
We're starting out.
That's
this is good.
super relevant though for like the first card for like the men's.
Oh, this is really relevant. I mean, people are facing their own inner demons, and the devil card is all about, in my opinion, taking personal responsibility.
Wow.
The devil figure in the middle, he's like a goat, right? So he's like the Satan figure, but you can look at it more as like a scapegoat. And there's 2 figures in the front, and they are chained to the devil figure, but their chains are loose around their neck. So they have the potential to just lift them up and leave and walk away. They're trying to blame figure or this idea or this person for their own personal problems, where in reality, they need to just kind of admit to themselves that they have their own personal power to make that change in their life. So I think it's a great card for your podcast, because I think the people who are going to be on this podcast are going to be facing their own inner struggle with taking that responsibility and forging their own paths and really kind of going through the process of stopping themselves blaming something else for their problems and really kind of taking it in hand and forming their own life. So yeah, I think your podcast is going to bring up a lot of personal turmoil that's going to be good for people to deal with. Did you have any thoughts or questions on that?
Just that's kind of at the end when we finished the questions, we asked the people what the process was like going through the process of answering the questions. And I mean, Darren and I haven't even done it yet. And when I look at them, I'm like, I don't want to answer these questions. Like some of them are pretty tough. And so I think it's relevant for that as well, because people are trying to explain they thank, but it's a difficult journey for some people.
Yeah, definitely. So even though it looks like kind of a spooky card, you know, I think it makes good sense for your podcast. It's going to help that healing process in a way for a lot of people.
It's like the shadow work, you know, I think, because I've listened to the show, and even when I hear it, I'm like, what? I'm like, damn, I really fall short. So,
well, the first step is to admit it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You know, you got it.
That's cool though. I got a strong reaction when she flipped that.
Yeah, totally.
The trick is to compare yourself to who you were yesterday, and that's all you can do. And that if you do anything other than that, you're just gonna bring in a lot of pain and shame and a lot of shitty things, man. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters, is to be a little better than you were yesterday.
Yeah, I love I love realizing my own demons. It's like, oh, you fucking bastard, there you are. It's like pulling it out from the subconscious, so
They're usually disguised as triggers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see what we get for our second card here. Second one. Wow, we're having a lot of major cards, the moon. And similar to the devil in a lot of ways. So
dark.
It's dark. It's all about that Jungian psychology, shadow self. The image is really neat. You have kind of a moon set inside of the sun. And the moonlight, when you think about moonlight, it's really kind of a false light, right? Because it's just reflecting the light of the sun. So with the moon card, one thing you can think about is what falsehoods are we telling to ourselves? So again, kind of like the devil card, there's a component of needing to admit the truth to ourselves. There's also, in the image, there's a pathway, a crooked pathway between two animals, a dog and a wolf. These civilized and uncivilized aspects of ourself, and specifically our subconscious and our minds. So we all walk, that path. We have our wild instinctual self that's important to our survival. It's why we're here. It's why we evolved as humans. And then we have our civilized self represented by that dog. And we're all kind of walking that crooked path. And sometimes you fall off that path a bit, leading to, in the image, you come across this pool with kind of this crazy lobster figure coming out. And that's really kind of your own demons, your own kind of shadow self that you need to face head on. And the moon, when you think about the word the moon, you think of like loon or luna in other languages, which is the root of the word lunacy. So there's a bit of madness with this card too. And it's almost like you have to face these inner demons, represented by this, in the image, this kind of like lobster figure coming out of the depths of the water. You have to face your shadow self, and you have to accept it before you can move forward. And kind of like the devil card, I think these are things people don't want to think about or don't want to admit to themselves. And I think there is even that tension between the dog and the wolf, the civilized and the uncivilized. When you're talking to men, I imagine that's kind of a tense point. Like what is the role of men nowadays? How far do we go on that kind of crooked path? And so those are just some things that came to my mind as I flipped for this card. But did you have any thoughts on this one?
That's interesting. I mean, it's interesting because we have a whole back end to the podcast. It's got like journaling aimed at self-discovery and courses on communication and things like that. So, I mean,
I think it really fits well, just like the devil
fits.
one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting too. You got like two major cards right off the bat. So, really potential for some profound changes in yourself and probably, society too.
Yeah, I mean,
in general.
I don't know. Like I've listened to the show, and on the surface, it's like pretty straightforward and quote unquote safe. But I think what the cards are saying is like, this is raw, primordial, like deep raw stuff, like primal, like when you're talking about these topics, and when you say trigger is like these are trigger cards for sure. It's like, I think it's good work to be done, but I'm getting the sense that, like, yeah, on the surface, it's a straightforward show about manhood and men, but what's really going on is like really, really raw and powerful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think just kind of asking these questions to these individuals and even giving them the power to kind of do this open source thing and have them ask others, that's going to be opening this kind of like doorway within their own subconscious where a lot of this stuff is going to kind of come through, and they're going to have a deeper experience than they anticipated. So I think that this process can be very life-changing for people. So yeah, some really intense vibes coming off these cards.
Cool.
Awesome.
Great. Hopefully good.
Yeah, that's
vibes.
what you want, right? That's the point.
Yeah. Well, we just want to, do what we can to add some value to the world.
So let's see what our final card is.
Oh, there's another one? Oh, boy.
Flipping it over.
Ooh.
Queen of Swords. So we have a court card here, and we have the Queen of Swords. And Swords is the suit in tarot that is tied to the mind, our thoughts and our ideas. It's also tied to communication, right? Because that's how we express and share our thoughts. And the Queen of Swords is someone who has developed a maturity and sense of accomplishment when it comes to those skills, because the queen and the king of any of the suits, they're kind of on top, right? So they've spent time working their way up, and now they're at this place to help others. And then also they have a sense of confidence at this point. You can see in the image, she kind of has her hand open while she's on the throne. She's kind of like welcoming her subjects in a way. So for you guys in this podcast, I think it's great that we got a swords card, because especially something like the Queen referencing clear ability to communicate effectively, to share that message, and then also to share compassion, because it is the Queen, and all the queens do kind of have that feminine energy too with them. There is kind of a sense of warmth that comes in. So yeah, I think doing this podcast is only going to increase your guys' ability to communicate effectively and get the message out there in a really profound way. And then at the same time, keep that compassion as part of the movement and of the discussion.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. That all sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like, the first two cards are these raw, digging up your demons and digging up the subconscious. And the final card, the conclusion, is this like sort of, the fact that it's a swords card makes me think that the podcasting format air is like the intellect, and sword is like your intellect. So it relates to like communication, and I see it as like you're starting off with this raw material, like, fucked up issues that nobody's talking about, and sort of shooting through this Queen of Swords card, which is like,
it's like you're going to be able to articulate it in a way that
communicative,
people haven't.
and even like the Queen, because you so kind of like the watery, it's like water and air mixing. Yeah. So water is like your emotions, air is like your intellect. So it's like you're making sense of these like mucky emotions that have been hidden for a while. So yeah, it seems like the reading was more, specifically the open source thing. Maybe it's just like the fact that you're doing this with everyday people. Everyday people get to transmute these raw emotions and like make mental sense of them, sort of. So that's a cool reading.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty powerful. The more you guys do with it, and the more people you talk to, and I hope it spreads. I hope more people hear about this project. I find it really interesting. I think you guys are doing something pretty cool with it. So hopefully, it gets out there, and people start participating in this open source and contributing.
Thanks. Yeah, that's great.
I think we got our first one the other day.
Thanks for the reading. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to share with the listeners today?
Go ahead.
Before we were kind of wrapping up, could you tell our listeners a little bit about your event in Colorado?
Yeah, sure. So one of our favorite guests of all time, we've had him on like 5 or 6 times, is
Seven.
Really? Seven?
7 times.
Randall Carlson. He talks about sacred geometry and catastrophism, and he's worked a lot with Graham Hancock and on theories of how the end of the ice age happened and that there was a massive flood as opposed to this uniformitarianism change to the environment. And he's a fascinating dude. He's a Freemason, and he's going to be meeting us in Colorado from May 17th to May 27th, I think, for like 3 different 3-day events kind of down there. We have a big log mansion kind of rented on this huge property. And there's Elk Lake Lodge near Pagosa Springs, which is also near the Four Corners.
That's kind of near Durango.
Yep. It's like 20 minutes south of Durango, I think. 20 miles or 20 minutes. Yeah.
20 minutes, yeah.
That's a really cool area. Like I went to school in Boulder, and Durango I've visited a few times. We used to call the people out there Durangotans.
That's awesome. So you
should use that verbiage when you're out there.
Yeah, we should.
Perfect. Yeah, it's great. It's been surrounded with a bunch of synchronicity.
The guy who owns the cabin
is now going to stop by.
He's going to join us. Like it's not even a cabin. It's a log mansion, right? And there's a tent spot, so people are going to be tenting. There'll be like 25 to 40 people probably for each 3-day section, and Randall's going to take them out on a little tour of what's the area
Mesa
there? There's
Verde.
a Mesa Verde, and there's a couple other things he wants to check out, and then he's going to do a lecture for everybody. We'll do a live podcast, maybe at night, do some CE5 like sky watching, and try and bring in some UFOs, like do some stuff like that.
Fireside chatting. Yeah.
Do some
we got a
fireside
Wim Hof
chatting.
guy coming to the first weekend. He's going to teach, not Wim Hof himself, one of his certified trainers
is going to come and teach us the Wim Hof breathing method. So lots of stuff going on, and there was something I was leading to something there about that. What was it? I was leading to something and I went off track.
You're Seasedian?
No, we talked about that. It was about what
Graham's going to do morning yoga?
No, I'm not doing the yoga. I can't remember what I was going to say. Yeah. Anyways,
Carlson, baby.
Yeah.
The last weekend sold out. Actually, there might be 1 or 2 spots left in the last weekend since we got a little bit of leeway. We're able to add a couple extra spots, but we're.
So is it sold out right now?
No, there's 3 different events. So the last weekend I think is sold out, but there's still spots left in the first weekend and in the midweek.
Mm-hmm.
We were looking at pictures. We were like, "Damn, that looks sick."
Yeah, it's gonna be quite the adventure.
It's just fun getting together with a bunch of friends from the podcast and chatting about all this stuff. It's just it's you guys know because you talk about it as well. It's great to just meet with a bunch of like-minded people, and it just has a blast. We've done smaller little meetups like this every year for the last couple of years, but this is obviously much bigger now. So.
This is our kick at the can. This is our taking a shot at it. So you guys got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's got to happen.
Yeah.
We'll sell her out. There's a waiting list for the last weekend, I believe. Alan says. He's listening live.
Awesome. Well, where can our listeners find you guys? What platforms is your new podcast on, as well as Grimerica?
I think Grimerica's on everything unless we're kicked off.
Oh, sorry, I got to finish that off. I remembered. So after all that organizing, the guy that organizes is actually listening to it right now. Big thanks and shout out to Alan, who you can reach him at CAC 2019 at hdtravel.me, right?
Yeah, just go to badcomment.com.
Badcomment.com. So he gets in touch with the owner, and the owner of this big cabin has done speeches in front of people about the pyramids and all the different strange stuff on the pyramids. I mean, I don't know how many shows we've done. He's a neighbor with one of our guests, James Brown, who talks about the electric Egyptians. And he's doing these talks on synchronicities. Like we talk about synchronicities all the time. And he's got the craziest
now he's listening to the
talks
podcast.
on synchronicities. And now he's into all the different stuff that we're into. So I mean, pretty mind-blowing synchronicities leading us up to this event as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sorry, Darren.
Yeah.
So buy some tickets.
Cool.
Don't delay.
So how do we get? You got to go back to the Grimerica. You were saying
Just go to badcomment.com for all that.
Grimerica, and
then go to Grimerica. Yeah, Grimerica's everywhere. We're on Spotify. Any place you can find podcasts, you'll find Grimerica. If you type Grimerica into Google, we'll be the first few pages. 13
And you guys are on
questions
social
below.
media too.
We're on social media for now.
Wait, I have to ask one
I have
last
no
question
strike.
'cause I forgot. Who writes all your songs?
Well,
The
which
jingles
songs? The
or-
jingles?
There's, I guess anything. It sounds like it's one person.
So it's Felix-
Felix probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably
Felix Ortega the second, Sir Felix Ortega the second, Sir Felix at bandcamp.com. He does a lot of our jingles. We got a ton of jingles just mailed in from listeners and fans, but then Felix has done a lot of the outro music. I feature Felix, and all the interlude music is usually broke for free. I'll change it up once in a while, but not too often. And the outro music for 13 Questions is Why by Superman.
And how do you get to that website?
13questionspodcast.com. It doesn't quite have you're going to have to probably type that shit in because it's going to take a while. We've been pimping Grimerica for 6 years, so we got the Googles covered. 13 Questions is going to take a while.
No, 13 Questions is great. I listen to everyone that you guys put out, so it's great.
Oh, thanks, buddy. That's awesome.
Yeah, we
All right.
appreciate
Well,
that.
to Darren and Graham, thank you guys so much for talking with us today. We really appreciate it. And to all of our listeners, check out Grimerica and 13 Questions. We're sort of using your shows as templates for our shows, so we appreciate the sharing of ideas and everything and giving us something to work from. And, hopefully we could talk again or meet in person sometime, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
I got a little nervous about coming to Chicago. I don't want to get shot. I'm just kidding. I'll just stay in the airport. Actually, I hear
Don't do that.
Chicago has
Airport
great food.
sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's a good time.
Thanks for having us on, guys.
Yeah,
Really
thanks for having
appreciate
us on. We appreciate
All
it.
right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Still live.
Still live?
Yeah. Are we going to do an intro?
We have
We're
to.
going to be back with an intro in 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Yeah, really? Okay.